Hello and welcome to the presentation of the Battle of Pilot Knob. So the Battle of Pilot Knob, or sometimes called the Battle of Fort Davidson, is a very crucial battle in the Civil War, and it's specifically a very crucial battle in the Civil War in Missouri. So let's get into the details of the battle and why it was so crucial and influential in the Civil War. So leading the side for the Confederates was General Price. He was a great general, and he was well respected by the Confederacy. And in September of 1864, the Confederacy trusted him so much that they decided to make him the head of the invasion of Missouri. So the Confederacy was trying to take over Missouri for themselves because it was a border state and they were kind of on the fence on who to join, so they were just going to take him over and make them join the Confederacy. So his force that he was supposed to take over the state of Missouri with, he had about 12,000 men with him, but they were very inexperienced and young soldiers. 3,000 of them didn't even have guns, and 6,000 of them had never been in combat before. So they wanted to, as a group, take over St. Louis and Jefferson City first and then spread out to the rest of the state, but eventually they wanted to end up taking over the entire state of Missouri. And the first thing that they had to do to take over the state was take this Fort Davidson. It was the first obstacle in their path, and it was occupied by Union forces. And it was located at a railroad in the south terminus of the Iron Mountain Railroad and the Pilot Knob, right next to Pilot Knob Mountain, as you can see on the picture. There's the fort right there, the star, Fort Davidson, and then Pilot Knob is right above it. So the fort was very well defended. It had walls that were 9 feet tall and 10 feet thick. It was also surrounded by a 9-foot deep moat. And the leader of the Union forces was General Ewing, the leader of the Union troops stationed at Fort Davidson. There was only about 1,500 people or soldiers at the fort manning it, but they also had artillery cannons that could shoot up to 300 yards in any direction. So they were well defended with their guns and their artillery, but they were outnumbered almost 10 to 1. So their odds did not look very good going into the battle. So the actual battle took place on September 27th, 1864. And so the plan was for General Price to, since he had so many men, he just said that we're going to surround the fort and charge in at it from every side, and there's no way that their numbers can keep up with ours. But this attack was very bad and it failed miserably. The movements were not synchronized, and they were like badly timed because some of the groups, the units were attacking way too soon, and they were way ahead of all the other troops, and some of them were straggling behind and they were way too far back. So the Union soldiers in the fort were able to easily just use their artilleries to focus in on whatever group was in the front. And since the groups were so far behind each other and like unsynchronized, and they weren't all attacking at once like the plan, they were able to easily take out whoever's in front, and then they would even have enough time to switch their line of fire to the next closest after the first group was destroyed. So this battle was very bad for the Confederacy, and they lost heavy amounts of men. So even though they won the first battle and defeated many of the Confederacy soldiers, General Ewing of the Union knew that they probably would not survive another full-on assault because the numbers were just too big for the Confederacy, and he didn't think that they were going to make the same mistake again. So Price was in obviously in need of a lot of guns and ammo because 3,000 of his troops didn't even have guns. So instead of allowing themselves to be defeated and their ammo and guns be taken for the Confederacy's benefit, Ewing had his troops sneak out with all their supplies, ammo, food, anything they needed, and they fled the fort in the middle of the night while the Confederates were sleeping. And some stayed behind and set up explosives around the fort, and they set them off, and it destroyed pretty much all of the fort, and all the supplies that were left over are gone. So the Confederacy woke up, and they found that the Union troops were gone, and that there was nothing that they could use for their army to resupply or anything except for their already fallen soldiers. So the Confederacy was unable to arm the rest of their troops, and they were they're even more unsupplied because they just wasted many men and a lot of ammo trying to take the fort when it was now pretty much all for nothing. So after the battle, it was figured out that the Confederates lost almost 1,200 men, and the Union only lost 20, despite having been down in a 10-to-1 man disadvantage. So after this, Price obviously continued on, still having a lot of men with him, but he never won a battle in this invasion. He kept losing over and over again because his men were just not ready to fight because they didn't have enough supplies, and they weren't accustomed to winning because they had never even, some of them have never even won a battle before. So he was unable to resupply, and the invasion ended up becoming a complete failure. And him and his troops were forced to withdraw from Missouri, and the invasion was stopped, and the Union took over Missouri for themselves. So the Battle of Pilot Knob is really important because it was the first stand for the Union in telling the Confederacy that we're not going to give you Missouri, we're not just going to hand it over to you, we're going to fight. And so the Battle of Pilot Knob set the tone for the battles in Missouri and for the Civil War in Missouri, and it ultimately led to Price's invasion becoming a failure and the Union regaining control of Missouri. Thank you.